1, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Step number 1 is going to be to create a 4-measure rhythm using 4/4 time. 4/4 time means that there are 4 beats per measure. So now let's look at our note values. We just clapped and said our note values, so we are ready to fill in how many beats each note gets. So we know that a whole note, it gets 4 beats per measure. A half note, it gets half of that many beats. So half of 4, we know a half note gets 2 beats. And then a quarter note, we know that it takes 4 quarter notes to make 1 measure. So that means it is equal to 1 beat. All right, now let's look at our 8th note pair. We know that 2 8th notes equals 1 beat, so that means that there are 2 notes in 1 beat. And our 16th notes, we know that it takes 1, 2, 3, 4 16th notes to equal 1 beat. So there are 4 notes in 1 beat, okay? Great. So now that we've got all of our note values filled in, we're ready to create our rhythm. This is the part where you get to be creative and decide which kind of rhythm pattern you would like to put. So for the first measure, I think I would like to use definitely some quarter notes and some 8th note pairs. So I think I'm going to do something like 1, 2, and 3, 4. That's going to be a quarter, 8th note pair, quarter, quarter, because I've got 1, 2, and 3, 4. Let me go ahead and draw that. Looks like this. So make sure that your quarter note, that the line goes right through the center of every single note that you draw. There's my quarter. Here's my 8th note pair. 2 and here is my 3, another quarter, and 4, another quarter. Great. I've got 1, 2, and 3, 4. So for my second measure, I think I would like to use some 16th notes in there, and maybe I'll use another quarter note and a half note. Let's see what that sounds like. So I would clap it like this. 1 E and a 2, 3. That sounds good. Let's go ahead and draw that. So here are my 16th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, because it takes 4 of these to make 1 beat. One E and I said I wanted a quarter for 2, and I want to use a half note, and I know a half note gets 2 beats, so there is no room for anything else because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's go on to the third measure. So for my third measure, I think I want to use, I want to use a lot of 8th notes. So let me see what this sounds like. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. I like that. So I'm picking 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. Okay. So 8th note pair, that's 1 beat, 1 and, 2 and remember we say the and because there are 2 notes to equal 1 beat. 1 and 2 and 3, oh, I forgot what my rhythm was. Oh, 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and, there it is. 3 for my quarter, 1 sound or 1 note in 1 beat, and 4 and, 2 notes in 1 beat. Good, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 beats in that measure, so that works perfectly. Let's see how it sounds from the beginning. Let's see what it sounded like. It sounds like this. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 E and a 2, 3. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. Let's see what I want my last measure to have. Maybe I will put another half note and some quarters. So if I use a half note, 1, that only leaves me with 2 beats left. I think I would like to use 2 quarter notes for my 2 beats left. 1, 2. There we go. So that goes 1, 3, 4. Let's see if I can clap the whole thing from start to finish. Or I'm gonna tap, you clap. 1, 2, here I go. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 E and a 2, 3. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 3, 4. I really like that rhythm. I think it's gonna be perfect for when we make our fraction bars. Stay tuned because we're about to go to the next step. Step number 2. So we're about to create fraction bars using our notes. If you have some colored pens or pencils, make sure you have them to use. If not, you can always just use a regular pencil to shade. I didn't have 5 different colored pens, so I'm going to be using a regular pencil for one of my shades. So for a whole note, look at the first one, a whole note. I know that a whole is equal to one whole, so I can literally shade in the whole bar because that is one whole measure right there. If I would have used a whole note, I would have been using one whole note in one measure. All right, now a half note, and remember my whole note was 4 beats, okay? My half note was only 2 beats, which was half of 4. So to show it in a fraction bar, I'm gonna divide my fraction bar by half. I'm gonna use my ruler here to make sure I get a nice straight line. That looks to be about half. And I think for a half note, I'm gonna use the color orange. Okay, all right. And then a quarter note. I know that it takes 4 quarter notes to make one whole. So I'm gonna go ahead and divide my fraction bar into 4 equal pieces. So I'm gonna use my ruler and I'm going to divide it into 4 equal pieces. So here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, and then there's 4. Try to make those lines as straight as you can. All right, so one quarter note is only going to be one of those 4 squares colored in. If I had 2 quarter notes, then I would color in 2 of them. If I had 3, then 3 of them. But I only have 1 right there, so just 1. All right, now for my 1/8 notes. Excuse me. I know that it takes 2 1/8 notes to equal 1 of those. So if I have 4 quarter notes and it takes 2 to 1, then I'm gonna have 2, 4, 6, 8. I need to divide my fraction bar into 8 equal parts. And how cool is that? It's an 1/8 note, so we divide it into 8ths. So let's go back to my 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then now I'm going to divide those in half to get my 8. 5, 6, 7. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. And if I only had 1/8 note, then I would only color in 1. But I've got 2. So I'm going to color in 2 because 2 is equal to 1. All right, now my 16th notes for my fraction bar. I know that it takes 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 notes to equal 1 beat. So I'm going to have 4 pieces in each section. So if I divide it, go back and divide it equally into 4 different pieces. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I need to divide each section by 4 for my 16th notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I tried to divide them as evenly as possible. All right, so for my 16th notes, I know it takes 4 of these to equal 1 of those, so I'm going to color in 4. If I just had 1 16th note, I would only be coloring in 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool, now I've got, this is 1 beat here, that's 1 beat there, it's 1 beat there, and that's 2 beats, and that's 4 beats right there. I'm just gonna go over these lines to make sure you can see them. Because with that purple, it's kind of hard to see. Let me get a little closer. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now I already created my rhythm. Now I need to just convert it to fraction bars. So the first measure, I had 1, 2, and 3, 4. So I had 1 quarter note, an 1/8 note pair, a quarter note, and a quarter note. So I know I need to make a fraction bar 1 quarter note, an 1/8 note pair, and then 2 more quarter notes. So I'm gonna take my ruler and do the best you can right here, and I'm going to draw a fraction bar to show a quarter note. I'm gonna use the inch side and make my bar 1 inch tall. There's 1 inch, and I'm gonna move over and another 1 inch and connect. Now I'm going to divide mine into 4 equal parts because it takes 4 quarter notes to equal 1 whole. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good, I've got my quarter note. So let me just go ahead and color in 1 quarter note. And then the next part of my rhythm was an 1/8 note pair. So again, I'm going to make another, I need to add. So 1/4 note plus an 1/8 note pair. Again, I'm going to use 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. And I'm going to divide it, excuse me, into 8 parts because I have an 1/8 note. And remember, it takes 8 of those to equal a whole, and it takes 2 1/8 notes to equal 1/4. So here I go. I like to divide it by 4s first. For me, that's easier. And then divide those in half to get my 8. And I have an 1/8 note pair, so I don't need just 1 block colored in, I need 2 blocks colored in. And that equals the 1 beat. So I've got 1/4 plus an 1/8 note pair. And then I said I also had 2 more 1/4 notes in my rhythm. Remember? 1/4 note, 1/8 note pair, 1/4 note, 1/4 note. So again, take my ruler, measure out 1 inch line, 1 there, 1 there, and in 4 again, because I'm with my 1/4 note, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm gonna go ahead and color it in. 1/4 note. And then the last note in my measure was another 1/4 note. Same thing. 1 inch line, 1 inch line, and divide it into 4. 1, 2, 3. And 1/4 note. Now I could actually show all of these on one fraction bar because all of these parts should equal a whole. Let's see if it works. If we did it correctly, it will. 1 inch, 1 inch, line, line. Okay, so I know I started with a 1/4 note first, so let me divide my line into 4. Okay, so I started with a 1/4 note. And then I used 1/8 note pairs. And I know that it takes 2 1/8 note pairs to equal 1 beat. So remember, I have to divide that section. And there is my 2 in 1. And then I had a 1/4 note and a 1/4 note. So I'll add my 3rd 1/4 note and my 4th 1/4 note. And look, all these parts equals 1 whole. So I've got 1 1/4 note, 2 1/8 notes, 1 1/4 note, 1 1/4 note, all equals 1 whole. Let's go on to measure 2. For measure 2, I was using 1/16 notes, a 1/4, and a 1/2 note. So, get my fraction bar to show 1/16 notes. And I'm going to use 1 inch line, 1 inch line. And remember, because it's 1/16 notes, I have to divide it into 16 parts. So I like to do 4 first because it's easier for me. And then cut those in half. And then now I'm gonna even cut those in half. And I should have 16 small pieces. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Good, I've got 16. Now, to make 1 beat with my 16th notes, I know I need 4 of those. So 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. All right, the second note in my measure for measure number 2 was a quarter note. Easy peasy. Let me add my quarter note. So here we go again. Excuse me. 1 inch, 1 inch. And now I'm gonna divide it into 4 pieces for a quarter note. And I need one of those 4 to make a quarter note. And then the last part of that measure was a half note in measure 2. And a half note I know gets 2 beats. So let me draw a fraction bar for a half note. 1 inch, 1 inch. And then I need to divide my fraction bar in half for a half note and color it in. Now, if I want to make sure that all my parts equal a whole, let me put them all together on one fraction bar. So here I go, my 1 inch fraction bar. All right. All right, now I started with a 16th note with 16th notes, and remember I need 4 of them. So I'm going to make 4 16th notes. There's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I got my 16th notes, color those in. And then the next note was a quarter note. So let's make sure I use, there we go. And here's my quarter note. And then I had 1 half note left. Well, look at there. I literally have half left of the fraction bar. That's perfect, it works. So part plus part plus part, and this one equals a whole. Alrighty, now measure 3. Measure 3. I've got 2 1/8 note pairs, a quarter, and another 1/8 note pair for measure 3. So let's get going. Here's my fraction bar. 1 inch, 1 inch. And I'm doing an 1/8 note pair. So I need 2. Remember, I've got 8 pieces and I need 2 of those 8 to make 1 1/8 note pair. 1, 2. And then the second part of my measure for my second beat was again another 1/8 note pair. So I'm gonna add another 1/8 note pair, my 1 inch line, 1 inch line, connect, connect. And since it's an 1/8 note, I need to divide it into 8 pieces. Okay. 2 of those pieces makes 1 beat. 2 of those pieces makes 1 beat. And then I need to add, because the third beat in my measure was a quarter note. So here we go. Here's my 1 inch line. 1 inch line, connect, connect. A quarter note, there are 4 quarter notes per measure, so 4 parts. And I'm only putting 1 quarter note for 1 beat. So there is my quarter. And the last note for beat 4 was another 1/8 note pair. Here we go. And remember, an 1/8 note pair, I've got to divide it into 8 equal parts. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 2 1/8 notes equals 1 beat. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's see, do all of those parts when I add them together equal a whole? They should. My 1 inch, 1 inch, connect, connect. So I started off with an 1/8 note pair, and I remember that I needed 2 of those pieces to make 1 beat. And then I had another 1/8 note pair, and those were 2 pieces. And then I had a 1/4 note, and then I had another 1/8 note pair to end, 2 pieces. Let's see. 1/8 note pair, 1/8 note pair, 1/4 note, 1/8 note pair. Yeah, it looks like all of my parts equaled a whole. I've got 1/8 note pair, 1/8 note pair, 1/4, 1/8 note pair. And then the very last measure, we had a 1/2 note and 2 1/4 notes. So let's get drawing our fraction bars. So I've got 1 inch line, 1 inch line, connect, connect. I started off with a 1/2 note, so half of that I need to color in. There's my 1/2 note, 2 beats, and then I had a 1/4 note. Remember, divide it into 4 because it takes 4 1/4 notes to equal 1 whole. So 1 1/4 note, and then my 4th beat in the measure was another 1/4 note. So let's go ahead and put that. 1 inch, 1 inch, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. It should equal, all those parts should equal 1 whole fraction bar. 1 inch, 1 inch. All right, so I started off with a 1/2 note, so divide it into half. And then I had 2 1/4 notes. So here we go, 2 1/4 notes. 1, 2. And they do equal 1 whole measure, or 1 whole fraction bar. How cool is this? I bet you didn't know we could do math and music. So now I can take my handy pencil here and my handy pen here, and I can tap the rhythm. You can use your hands, you can use 2 pencils put together like mine, or a pen and a pencil to make rhythm sticks, or you can use your shaker that you made in your shaker video, or you can use the table and drum it. So the choice is up to you. First, I'm just going to tap each rhythm using my pencil and my pen. So the first measure, 1, 2, here I go. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 E and a 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 3, 4. If you didn't catch that, I will do it so you can see and we can follow along. 1, 2, here we go. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 E and a 2, 3 E. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 3, 4. Take your hand on the table and drum. And 3, 2, 1, here we go. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 E and a 2, 3. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 3, 4. How about that? We just made rhythm with fraction bars and we just clapped it. And now you know another way you can show rhythm, like this and like this. All right, everybody, see you next time for another music and math together video. Next time we're going to be focusing on pi graphs.